Welcome back to Fine Art Diary. Today we'll see how to paint a waterfall in the landscape. If you can remember, we started this painting in our last session and we have finished painting this mountain range. So we have completed the background and today we'll be working on the midground and that will be the waterfall. Also, we'll be discussing each and every step of it. So let's jump into the painting. Today also, I'm going to use the same color palette I was using in the last session. And these are the colors I'm going to use. So this much we already have done and let's start with the waterfall. So first of all, let's do the block-in of the rocky surface in the midground. And for that I'm mixing raw umber, crimson lake and ultramarine blue. And with very quick brush strokes, let's do the block-in. These brush strokes can be random and spontaneous. The goal of the block-in is to get the appearance of the entire object at once. In this stage, we should not be bothered about the color and the values, but we should take care of the entire shape of it. In case if you have missed the previous video of how to paint this background mountain, you can go to that tutorial first and then you can follow this midground painting. The link I have given in the description. So you can see I am only thinking of the composition right now. In this landscape, light is coming from the left and it is quite warm in tone, and that is the reason you can see the dark I am using right now. It is quite cool in tone. That's alright. Now let's do the block-in of the water body in front. So for that I am taking ultramarine blue, yellow ochre, titanium white. Over here I am trying to mix a cool grey color. Let's start painting. Over here I am just defining the area of the water body, and we don't have to be very precise right now. That's looking fine, but the block-in is not complete yet. So right now I am going to define the top planes of the rocks. For this I am using yellow ochre, crimson lake and a touch of white. So like the previous video, I have switched to the angular brush. And as we discussed previously, that an angular brush can be very helpful while painting the rocks. You can use it for broad brush strokes. Also, you can add tiny detail to this brush. Still, the block-in is going on, but at the same time, I am also concentrating on the design of the rocks. Later on, this top plane will be covered by the water body, but right now, through the block-in, we have to convert this entire area into a volumetric surface. You can see with this mid-tone I am defining some of the side planes also. That means in our block-in we have started breaking the bigger shapes into smaller shapes. That should be the rule of the block-in. We need to start with the bigger shapes and gradually by breaking it we have to come to smaller and smaller shapes. And then there will be a possibility of a successful painting. So as I always discuss, the block-in is the most important part in the painting. If your block-in is successful, your final painting is going to be successful. It will not matter a lot how much detailing you have added to your painting. That's looking fine. Now let's add some bounce light to the side planes. For this, I am using Crimson Lake, Ultramarine Blue, Titanium White, and a touch of raw umber to neutralize it. So the planes facing towards the right hand side will get this bounce light. There can be two reasons for the bounce light. One is the cool sky bounce, and second is the bounce light from this water body. And the reason behind it is the key light is reflecting back from the sky and also reflecting back from the water body. And in this case, both the surfaces are cool in tone. So I have mixed a cool color for the bounce light. That's fine to me, and you can see it is already looking volumetric. And now let's paint a glaze on the water surface. And for this I have mixed Viridian Green, Cobalt Blue, and a touch of Titanium White. Over here my intention is to create a glaze. Though the color mixture is opaque, but the application can be very thin. While painting in some of the areas, I prefer to create multiple layers just to create depth in the surface. So in this case also, I am following the same concept. Over here, you must have noticed one thing, that I have given the direction of the flowing water. I just have added some marks of the water surface between the mountain range and this waterfall, and later on it is going to give the suggestion of the direction of the flowing water. That's alright. Now let's come back to the mid-tone, and you can see I am using the previously mixed color only. So in this stage I am breaking the bigger shapes even smaller shapes. At the bottom I will extend this shape a little bit more to show the foreshortening of this cliff. Over here you can notice one thing, just by giving some brush strokes you can add the suggestion of the rocky patterns. So I have started the block in with a dark color, and the top of it I am using a mid-tone to create these patterns. At the same time, we don't have to be very precise about the strokes. It has to be a little bit random, otherwise it is not going to look natural. Now for this area, till now we didn't add the mid-tone. So you can see very randomly I am adding some brush strokes, and later on I am going to convert these brush strokes into some rocks. So the very starting of the block-in has to be very random and spontaneous, and later on gradually we have to precise and need to use those brush strokes. So a few more brush strokes here and there. Over here you must have noticed one thing, that I am also using the dark tones in between, just to break the shape of the mid-tone. That's looking fine. Now it's time to add the suggestion of the light. The key light is coming from the left hand side. So all the planes facing towards the left hand side will receive the light. For this color mixture, I am using Crimson Lake, Yellow Ochre, Titanium White, and a touch of raw umber. So it is the same mixture I have used for my mid-tone. But in this particular mixture, the part of Titanium White and Yellow Ochre is a little bit more than the mid-tone. The reason we already have discussed, because the key light is warm. So we just need to analyze the key light and accordingly need to place the brush strokes. In this side also, I am going to do the same. That's alright. Now let's re-establish some of the shadow shapes. So I am just trying to increase the depth of it. In this side also doing the same to make this shape a little more volumetric. Gradually the blocking is becoming stronger. Now let's add some suggestion of the light in this side also. I should not overdo it because in the left hand side a cliff will come and it is going to cast shadow on this area. So far, how much I am painted in the midground is not looking like a part of this landscape, and the reason is there is no trace of the green, and that is the reason I am adding green here and there to unify the entire landscape, and at the same time it is going to give the suggestion of some foliage. For this green I am using viridian green, cobalt blue, yellow ochre, cad yellow medium, and a touch of titanium white. I am assuming all the possible places for the green and accordingly taking my decision. You can see it's already looking unified. That's fine. Now we have to add the highlights also to this green area. In the same mixture, I have added a little more cad yellow medium and titanium white. Now it's time to add the water surface. For this, I am using ultramarine blue, cobalt blue, mixed with titanium white. I am not going to cover all the top planes, but I will leave some of the positive areas and will only paint the negative areas. It will give the sense of some rocks in between. This is a romantic landscape I am painting. One of the goals of this painting is to create distance, how much area I can cover within this canvas. When I will look at this painting, I should feel like I can fly over this landscape, and by maintaining all the factors, definitely that can be done. I started with the distant mountain, and in the background also I created several layers of the mountain range, and then the midground. Towards the foreground I am painting this waterfall. When I will be painting two cliffs in the foreground, it will push this waterfall even more backward, and it will create more distance from the viewer's eyes. Now you can see the continuation of the water flow. That's alright, now it's time to paint the waterfall. And for this I am using the same color mixture and I am using a number 2 flat brush. So by using few brush strokes, each fall can be painted. You can see I am trying to establish the waterfalls by using vertical brush strokes. And then I am connecting the top part of the stroke with the water body. Over here you can notice I am assuming a stone at that point and the water line is breaking, and the same thing I am doing over here also. For the smaller fall I am using a number 2 filbert brush. A filbert brush can be very useful for this kind of strokes. There should be variation in the thickness and design of each waterfall, and this is what I am trying to do right now. This is looking fine. I'll come back to this area, but before that, let's paint the water body. For this, I'm using ultramarine blue and titanium white. I'm going to cover the entire water surface. If you can remember, in my previous mixture I have used cobalt blue and viridian for the water, and this time I am using only ultramarine blue. And when all these colors will mix together and the bottom layer will see through this particular layer, it will create a different kind of illusion. That's fine. Now let's give the hints of the shadow. And with the same mixture I have added a little more ultramarine blue and cobalt blue and made the mixture a little more darker. So mainly it will cast the shadow at the right hand side because the key light is coming from the left hand side. That's alright. Now let's add some reflection on the water surface. Once again, we don't have to be very precise. I'm roughly trying to mimic the color, and with very spontaneous brush strokes, this can be established. You must have noticed one thing. First I am giving the vertical strokes, and then on the top of it I am giving horizontal strokes. So whatever color I have given for the dark tone and the mid tone, I'm just trying to mimic those. Alright, now it's time to paint some water ripples. For this I'm using cobalt blue, ultramarine blue mixed with titanium white. And with the help of the angular brush you can see how I am creating the pattern. It has to be very random. I'm not following a particular pattern, but I'm just giving some marks here and there, very randomly. Only one thing I am maintaining over here, that is the strokes towards the foreground will be a little bit bigger than the strokes which are going far from the viewers. So automatically it will create the perspective. You can notice over here how I am changing the direction of the brush strokes. Spontaneously we need to add these marks. The patterns I am painting in the shadows, I am using a different color. In the same mixture I have added deep magenta to make it a little more cooler and darker. That's alright, now let's come back to the waterfall. Let's add some more brush strokes to each waterfall. I'm using the same color, the mixture of ultramarine blue, cobalt blue and titanium white. But this time, the portion of titanium white is a little bit more. My goal is to create some steps and to show the direction of the water flow. And this is what I am doing right now. If you notice carefully, in between I am trying to give a suggestion of another stone, which will create another step. So the water body first hitting that stone and then flowing down. So giving the suggestion of the direction of the water flow, you can see previously I kept some darker strokes and right now I am assuming those brush strokes as stones and accordingly I am giving my strokes. For the top planes I am using horizontal strokes and for the side planes I am using vertical strokes. So like this you can create the topology of an object. With few brush strokes, you can give the direction of the water flow. Previously, we created an overall pattern throughout the surface, and some of the areas I am trying to follow those patterns. According to my plan, I am going to add some segmented falls in this area. And right now I am giving the direction for those also. Now it's time to add the highlights. And for this I am using directly titanium white. So whatever shapes we have got with the broad brush strokes, now I am trying to refine those shapes and trying to figure out the areas which are getting brightest light. There is also another reason to add this layer. Acrylic painting is having the tendency to become darker after drying. So whatever the bright areas we painted before became a little bit darker. So by adding titanium white in some of the areas will give it its correct value. We are almost towards the end of this painting. Now let's add some tiny brush strokes by using a liner brush. That's looking fine and we are done for the day. In case if you have missed the painting of the background mountain, you can check out the previous session. The link I have given in the description, you can check it out. In the next session, we are going to paint the foreground cliffs and we are going to complete this painting. That's all for the day. Hope you enjoyed today's session. You may subscribe the channel because many more painting video tutorials are coming in future. Thank you very much for watching.